Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Firewalls Don't Stop Dragons. I am your host, Kerry Parker, and today we have episode 455 for November 17th, 2025. We got a news show for you today. Plenty of stuff to cover, more than I can cover in one episode, as usual. But before we get into the usual news, I will have some quickies that I'll cover without doing a full article on them. I'm going to try to do that more often because there's always way too much news and I can't get to all the stories. But I would like to just do a quick lightning round kind of a thing before we start the regular news. And I can give you just some quick points that don't maybe require a whole article. So speaking of which, I would like to call out Google for rolling out their own version of what Apple called private cloud compute. And this is for their Gemini AI. And I welcome these efforts. What they're trying to do here is, because a lot of this AI stuff still requires computing to be done, quote unquote, in the cloud, which we all know just means someone else's computer, which specifically means not your computer. So we want these things to be private. We tell our chatbots things that we probably don't want to share with others. So Apple and Google have been trying to come up with ways, and Proton for that matter, to do computing in the cloud that is still private or at least mostly anonymous. And so Google is trying to do the same thing for their Gemini AI, and that's great. I think we need more of this kind of stuff. I'm glad to see that we're trying to innovate around this area. Also, I recently told you about a third-party service used by a lot of the airlines for booking called Airlines Reporting Corporation, or ARC. And they have been selling your travel data to the U.S. government and probably other places as well. 404 Media did an article about this, and I talked about it a while back. But they have done a recent follow-up article saying that you can request to ARC that they delete your data and stop sharing it with the U.S. government. And those are two different things. Basically, you start by sending an email to privacy@arccorp.com. But I'm not going to go through all that here. There's a link in the show notes. I recommend you do this. Again, for no other reason than just to register your disdain for this practice. This is bad. We never signed up for this, and we shouldn't be doing this. So the more of us that complain about this, I think the better. So when I saw this article, I started down this path myself. I sent them an email actually a couple of months ago when I first read the article, and I heard nothing back, but I did it again, and I got an automated response asking me for some follow-up information that they apparently need to complete my request. And I sent that off, and I have yet to hear back. It's only been about 10 days since I did that. But again, I'm doing it mainly to make sure that they understand that this is a bad practice, and I hope a lot of other people do this as well. Okay, so today we have a lot of stories about artificial intelligence. It's all over the news, and usually not in a good way. So our first article today is about Meta deciding, like everybody else, that they want to use your data to train their AI chatbots. And in this case, actually, they're saying that they're going to be using what you have done with Meta's AI in its various forms on Facebook and Instagram, etc., to show you targeted ads. And they're not really giving you any way to opt out. You may have gotten an email from them recently saying that there's privacy policy changes to the way they're handling your AI data. And if you follow through on that, there's really no way to not do it. I hope that they change their mind on that, but I'll tell you what's going on with that. Google is rolling out another Agentic AI feature to help you make purchases. Also, there was a really kind of disturbing article based on a TikTok post from somebody in Texas that exposes a rather unseemly collaboration between OpenTable, the service that a lot of us use to make reservations today, and the restaurants where you eat. And some new AI features from OpenTable offered to the restaurants that knows an awful lot about you. Amazon has sued Perplexity over their Agentic shopping tool. And then I've got a little bit longer article about the first reported AI-orchestrated cyber espionage campaign. That is a very interesting story. It's something that I've been saying is bound to happen, and it's probably already happened, but this is the first one to really make headlines. The European Union is again trying to push for major changes that would impact your privacy in a bad way. Lawmakers in Wisconsin are thinking about trying to ban VPNs. There was a really weird and creepy data gathering exercise by a U.S. senator about his colleagues And then we have at least one good story this week, and that is a new health privacy bill that is being put forward to help protect some of our health data that's being collected by our apps and smartwatches. And then I will give you my tip of the week, which is an easy button option for trying to delete your data with online data brokers. So lots to talk about today. Let's get to the news. All right, first up, this is from Ars Technica, and it's about a notice you may have received in your email lately from Facebook or Meta, telling you that they are basically going to be showing you ads based on how you interact with their AI systems, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp users may want to be extra careful while using Meta AI, as Meta has announced that it will soon be using AI interactions to personalize content and ad recommendations without giving users a way to opt out. Meta plans to notify users on October 7th, which I've already gotten this email, and you may have already too, that their AI interactions will influence recommendations beginning on December 16th. However, it may not be immediately obvious to all users that their AI interactions will be used in this way. The company's blog noted that the initial notification users will see only says, quote, "Learn how Meta will use your info in new ways to personalize your experience," unquote. Users will have to click through to understand that the changes specifically apply to Meta AI, with a second screen explaining, quote, "We'll start using your interaction with AIs to personalize your experience," unquote. Ars asked Meta why the initial notification didn't directly mention AI, and a Meta spokesperson, Emil Vasquez, said he would, quote, "disagree with the idea that we are obscuring this update in any way. We're sending notifications and emails to people about this change. As soon as someone clicks on the notification, it's immediately apparent that this is an AI update," unquote. In its blog post, Meta noted that, quote, "more than 1 billion people use Meta AI every month," unquote, stating its goals are to improve the way Meta AI works in order to fuel better experiences on all Meta apps. And then they say that sensitive conversations with Meta AI about topics such as religious views, sexual orientation, political views, health, racial or ethnic origin, philosophical beliefs, or trade union membership will not be used to target ads. "You're in control," Meta's blog said, reiterating that users can choose how they interact with AIs, unlink accounts on different apps to limit AI tracking, or adjust ad and content settings at any time. But once the tracking starts on December 16th, users will not have the option to opt out of targeted ads based on AI chats, Vasquez confirmed, emphasizing to Ars that, quote, "there isn't an opt-out for this feature," unquote. Meta likens recommendations based on AI chats to those based on liking a photo or following a page. But consider how much more Meta can glean from a user interacting with AI about their love of hiking than it can from a user liking a photo or following a hiking group page. Many reports document that people tend to overshare with AI, which many ChatGPT users regretted after their private chats temporarily started appearing in Google search results. Meta faced a similar controversy when users realized that the Meta AI app's Discover tab, quote, "was full of conversations with a chatbot that people didn't realize had been posted to a public feed," unquote. Business Insider reported, noting that, quote, "that was really bad, a huge privacy headache," unquote. For that reason, Meta users who don't want to see targeted content and ads based on more revealing chats may want to alter their habits. Most Meta users globally will be impacted by the update, which also applies to Meta wearables, like its expanding line of smart glasses, which offer Meta AI a rich data source of voice recordings, images, and videos, Media Post reported. Only regions with strict data laws, like the European Union, the United Kingdom, and South Korea, will be spared. Notably, last year, Meta faced backlash in the EU, where it was accused of using dark patterns to discourage AI opt-outs. At that time, head of Facebook Tom Allison described the future of Facebook as being all about developing the world's best recommendation technology and building one of the world's best collections of open models, tools, and resources for generative AI. With Meta's announcement this week, it seems like the company is moving ahead with its AI mission in every market that allows it. At the same time, the EU's Digital Service Act, or DSA, has won EU users more freedom to control their feeds on Meta apps. On Thursday, Bits of Freedom, a Netherlands-based advocacy group, specifically focused on privacy and freedom of communication, announced that a judge ruled Meta must respect users' choice to avoid invasive personalized feeds. Within 2 weeks, Meta must update its apps to allow EU users the choice of sticking with a chronological feed that is not based on profiling. Bits of Freedom sued Meta under the DSA, reminding the court that, quote, one of the core elements of the DSA is that users must have greater influence over the information they see, unquote. Ultimately, the judge agreed, ruling that Meta, which Bits of Freedom said used subtle design tricks to steer users to feeds where it can show as many interest and behavior-based ads as possible, must promptly make changes to comply with the DSA. Meta declined to comment on the ruling, while Bits of Freedom warned that areas with weak privacy laws could be facing threats to democracy as tech companies strive for greater control over what content shows up in a social media feed. And finally, a quote here from Bits of Freedom, who says, quote, for many people, and especially for young people, social media platforms are a major source of news and information. Therefore, it's crucial that users themselves can decide which content appears on their feed. Without that freedom of choice, participation in the public debate is seriously hampered, unquote. All right, so Facebook and all these companies, honestly, love to couch all of this as personalizing or enhancing your experience. That euphemism drives me crazy. At the end of the day, it's all about showing you targeted ads. So yes, sure, that does personalize your experience. Enhance, I don't know. That's what it does for me is creeps me out. And so what Meta is saying here is that, hey, just FYI, we're changing our privacy policy because we can. And what we're going to start doing is using whatever you do with our AI systems to also learn about you and send you even more targeted advertising. And apparently the only thing you can do is to just not use their AI, which I would recommend you don't do anyway. In fact, I would recommend, of course, you don't use any of Meta's products. But for a lot of people, that's not an option. I understand that. It's a social media thing. You want to stay in touch with your family and friends, and that's where a lot of them are. So the email I got from Facebook was different. It was not really what they were talking about. It just said to me, hi, Carrie, on December 16th, 2025, we're making changes to our privacy policy. Here are some details. And by details, there's like these next two sentences. We'll start using your interactions with AIs to personalize your experience in ads. Personalizing your experience includes suggesting content like posts that you may find interesting and reels to watch, which is their TikTok clone. It also includes showing ads that are more relevant to you. Thanks, Meta Privacy. Now, there was a link to their privacy policy, but it's the link to the whole privacy policy. It wasn't like just the changes. In this article, among others, Facebook says you have all these controls. It's always up to you. You can opt out at any time. You can twiddle the settings all you want to make your experience the way you want it. Yeah, well, there's like a gazillion controls, and they're all euphemistically labeled, so knowing what they actually do is hard to figure out, and then finding them in the first place is painful. If you go to their site where you can look at all these settings, it's really hard to get through them all. It's dozens of clicks. Now, Meta does have this like privacy checkup thing where it'll actually guide you through some of their settings, but I wouldn't trust them to guide you through these settings. It's all going to be more of this euphemistic crap like personalizing and enhancing your experience. How about enhancing my experience by not showing me ads at all? I recently posted this on social media. I want the right not to be advertised to, and I'm okay to pay for that. But here's where it's really going to start getting insidious, folks. And it hasn't happened broadly yet, but it's going to happen. And that is that you're going to start getting advertising within your AI stuff. Like in your AI chatbot stuff, you're going to start seeing ads. You're going to start seeing promoted links. And because it's AI, you're probably going to start getting things just kind of built into the recommendations. Like you asked for recommendations about so-and-so, and I know that you like this, Carrie. So here's my customized recommendations just for you. Which means that now all these results are going to be tainted, not just by what it thinks I know or want or like or enjoy, but also whatever it is being paid to promote. It's just like search engines now. When these search tools and research tools and things that we use to find information now become customized to the individual, it just enhances this notion of all of us living in our own bubbles. And we should definitely be able to disable that. And we should also be told whenever something that is being recommended to us is biased in any way, shape, or form. And by biased, I don't just mean like political bias. I mean like money bias. Somebody paid Facebook or the chatbot or whoever to show me that recommendation. So speaking of agentic AI and advertising products to you, Google is rolling out a new agentic checkout feature to make purchases for you. This is an article from Lifehacker telling you about how this works. Shopping online, Google wants you to trust AI to click the buy button for you. Rolling out today, Google's new Agentic Checkout adds on to the company's existing price tracking feature, so it's not something you'll see all the time. Instead, when you get a price drop notification on an object you've been tracking, you might now see a new Buy For Me button that will send all the necessary information to the store's website and make the final purchase for you. Google says the AI will always ask your permission before starting Agentic Checkout and will only go through with purchase after you've confirmed all your shipping and payment details, which it will either pull from your Google Pay details or directly ask you for. The price you'll see also isn't informed by AI, but rather by Google's shopping graph, the same information that powers Google Search's shopping tab. That means it'll come directly from the store you'll be buying from, although while Google does promise it'll surface the most relevant offers for you, just trusting whatever the notification says will take away your ability to manually comparison shop. Once the AI has made your purchase for you, you should see all the usual confirmation emails hit whatever inbox you told the AI to link with your purchase. It all makes sense in theory. You're essentially being given a link to a product and then telling the AI to go to that link and fill out the checkout form for you. That should cut down on the hallucination concerns, assuming you're happy with the link you're buying from. The catch is that every website's checkout form is a little different, so Google's starting with just a few stores for now to cut down on the chance for errors. That means you'll only be able to try Agentic Checkout when buying from Wayfair, Chewy, Quince, and select Shopify merchants for now, but Google says there will be many more stores coming soon. While Agentic Checkout does take what could be a lengthy process down to a single click for buyers, the real use case here might be for sellers. Ensuring people actually click through to your store from a price drop notification can be a pain, and letting customers buy straight from the notification with a single button would make impulse purchases a bit more likely. If you notice yourself about to buy something just because a shiny new button is there, maybe take a beat before tapping it and consider whether you still want it or if you want to check other options yourself first. If you want to try out Agentic Checkout for yourself, and then it goes on to explain how to do it, I'm not going to tell you how to set this up. In fact, I'm going to really ask that you do not set this up. But let's take a moment here to think about what's going on. So these price checking apps and features are nice. I actually use a service called Camel, which is a weird name, but it lets you kind of camp on items on Amazon and look for price drops. But what all these things are doing, obviously, is taking note of the things that you want to buy, things that you're interested in buying. And that is very valuable information to people who want to sell stuff. Also, almost all of these systems are based on some sort of a commission or an affiliate link, which makes sense, right? If someone is brokering a deal, they should get a little taste of the action, right? And now with AI, we're taking it one step further, and we are giving these AI systems agency to act on your behalf. That is what agentic AI is all about. And yes, part of the value to this for the people selling stuff is that it just makes it that much easier. It removes even more friction to the buying process and hopefully brings them more sales. But we need to be very careful when we start giving these agentic AIs access to our wallets and the ability to buy things on our behalf and do other things on our behalf that involve money. Someone is going to figure out a way to hack this and get you to buy things that you didn't really want to buy, or take you to scam sites and buying things from there. And that's just in addition to whatever agreements are made between these various buyers and sellers that are bringing you to their websites or their products and maybe not showing you something else that is better or cheaper or whatever. But also just keep in mind that whenever you're signing up for services like this and you're telling them things about yourself, like what kind of products you're interested in, or I'm looking to buy this product for whatever reason, so keep an eye on the price for me, all this information is being saved and in some cases shared and adding to the profile that all of these data brokers have on you. And then you got to stop and think, what else could be done with that information? You might think, well, I don't care. Like, I want to see relevant ads. I want to see, if I'm going to see ads anyway, why not see it for products that I care about? And if someone's going to say, hey, you might want to look at this deal. Yeah, sure I do. I liked buying shoes and this is a deal on shoes. Thank you. But the kind of things that we buy says a lot about who we are. And a lot of those inferences are going to be made, and those inferences are going to be sold to somebody as well. So speaking of creepy, let's get to this next article. Now, I'm just going to say, first of all, that this article is from a site I have never quoted before and probably never quote again, called Bro Bible. I don't, just the name is cringy, and I apologize for that. I looked to try to find this, information from a more reputable site, and I couldn't find it. So take this, I guess, with a grain of salt. But it was based on a TikTok video, which I did go and view, which appears to be showing screenshots of OpenTable's new AI features that they are providing to restaurants. In this case, this is somebody on the waitstaff of a Michelin star restaurant in Texas. And as jaded as I am about privacy and data sharing, I still have to admit I didn't see this one coming. So let me read this article from Bro Bible. And it says, artificial intelligence is entering every part of our lives, often without our knowledge or consent. While some of these AI products have proven useful, others might make the average person a bit worried. For example, there are some AI systems that claim they can anticipate human behavior. One area you might think is immune from AI is dining. How could and why would a restaurant incorporate artificial intelligence? Well, according to TikTok user Cat Mentor, some restaurants already have, and it's all thanks to OpenTable. In her video, which currently has over 111,000 views, Mentor explains that as a host at a Michelin-starred restaurant, she has a perspective on the inner workings of the restaurant industry. She says that last week, her restaurant started to get AI-generated summaries of customer behavior for those who made reservations using OpenTable. Most of them are like this, she says. The screen behind her shows a list of drinks followed by the message, frequently orders these drinks when dining out. However, not all of the messages are this simple. Mentor says that in addition to notes like the one referenced above, she's seen frequent reviewer and high spender, spends more per cover than the average OpenTable guest, as well as long turn times, dines longer than the average OpenTable guest. She claims there is also a listing for late canceller, though she didn't manage to get a picture of it. As far as where OpenTable is getting this information, Mentor speculates that the information is coming from the people's OpenTable reservations across many restaurants. As evidence, she says her own profile notes that she enjoys juice and told her restaurant as much, even though they do not serve juice. OpenTable does not appear to have made a direct statement on this issue. That said, there are some clues on the company's website regarding what could be going on here. In a post from October 20th, OpenTable detailed its guest intelligence features. The features described sound very similar to what was laid out by Kat. And this is a quote from the OpenTable site. It says, quote, guest intelligence provides restaurants with a complete picture of their guests' dining habits, both within their restaurant and across the OpenTable network. This allows restaurants to identify VIPs, understand guest preferences, and refine segmentation for a more personalized experience. There's that phrase again. However, the only reference to artificial intelligence on this page appears to be for another service offered by OpenTable. This service allows restaurants to automatically respond to customer reviews using AI. In the comments section, users say they didn't like the idea of OpenTable generating summaries of their behavior. And these are some quotes. I'm not going to say quote unquote all the time, but these are some quotes from these comments. One said, can't this lead to discrimination while dining? Like, wouldn't this affect what type of service you receive? Someone else says, wait, this is so intrusive. I'm appalled. Another one joked that, wow, we got AI dinner credit scores before Grand Theft Auto 6. Others made humorous speculations about what their AI summaries might say, like uses ranch dressing inappropriately or steals the little dishes that the butter goes in. So now there at the bottom of this article was an update. Somebody from OpenTable got back to Bro Bible, and this is what somebody from OpenAI told them. Quote, guest insights are built from network-wide data and shared with restaurants to personalize service and help prepare their staff for shifts. We've heard directly from our restaurant partners how insights such as these can be greatly additive in how they're able to best serve diners. By agreeing to OpenTable's privacy policy, the diner grants OpenTable certain permissions to use their data, including the right to share their data with restaurants. Any restrictions on what OpenTable can share with restaurants is determined by what scope of data the diner agreed to in OpenTable's privacy policy. Diners have the ability to opt out of certain data sharing activities via their OpenTable account preferences. You can read OpenTable's privacy policy here, unquote. So, okay, let's take a beat and review what we've just been told. So again, this is from a very weird source. I did go to the original TikTok video and watch it, and in the background there were what looked like pictures of this person's, point of sale screen, the thing that the wait staff is typing on when you walk up to the front counter or whatever. What this is saying is that OpenTable, who has become like the go-to service for making reservations at restaurants, and when you go to websites now, a lot of times if you go to the restaurant's website or go through their app or whatever, the make a reservation button isn't done through the restaurant because they're not going to write their own service for accepting reservations and managing reservations. They're going to contract a third party to do this, and OpenTable has become probably the most popular one. So now OpenTable is a service used by all of these restaurants for managing and making reservations for dinner. So why wouldn't they start collecting data on people and then sharing that back with the restaurants? That would make restaurants much more likely to use their service. If they can get insights into, how many people are making reservations, how often do they cancel, how close to the reservation time do they cancel. But it's not just general aggregated statistics that they are getting specific ones about specific people. And what is really kind of blowing my mind here is that apparently this OpenTable system that manages reservations, obviously, I guess it must be hooked into the restaurant's systems of some sort, right? When you come in and say, hi, I'm Kerry Parker and I've got a reservation for 8 o'clock for 3 people, they look it up on their system and say, oh yes, I've got your reservation here. Thank you. Give me a minute to get your table ready. Well, that integration apparently goes a lot further, because it looks like, according to this, OpenTable is finding out things like whether or not you showed up for your reservation, if you were on time or if you were late, whether you canceled, and maybe how close to the reservation time it was when you canceled. And then it goes on to how long you actually stayed. Like one of the comments we saw here, that this is the kind of person who tends to overstay and tie up a table. That's something a restaurant might want to know. Also, what you bought and what you paid for it. Are you a high spender? Do you like expensive bottles of wine? Do you like cocktails? Do you get expensive meals? Or on the flip side, do you come in and get free chips and salsa and get a Coke, which you refill 5 times, and the cheapest item on the menu, and then leave an hour later? And if all that wasn't enough, even after you leave, if you're the kind of person that leaves a review, and what types of reviews do you tend to leave? Do you leave a lot of negative reviews, etc.? All of this information is being collected about you and then pre-shared with the next place that you go to make a reservation. And that means they might treat you differently. In fact, they might not even give you a reservation. But can you imagine going to a restaurant, one you've never been to before, using OpenTable to make a reservation, and when they get there, the server comes up to you and says, oh, Mr. Parker, I see that you really like wine. We've got a half price special on bottles of wine tonight. Or I see that you really like to get drunk. That you like to order a lot of cocktails. Would you like to see our cocktail menu? And how many of us knew when we made that reservation by clicking on the button at the restaurant where we want to make reservations that took us to OpenTable? How many of us stopped to read the privacy policy to realize that they were going to be gathering all this information, not just about the reservation, but about what I'm going to order, how long I'm going to stay, and whether I leave a review for that restaurant after the fact? That really upset me. So I decided to look into this for myself. And I do have an account on OpenTable. And it's because there's a particular restaurant that I go to when I'm traveling that I've made reservations for multiple times that use OpenTable to manage their reservations. And so I had an account there. And so I went and looked it up. And when I go into my account details, there's a preferences there for customized dining experience. And there are multiple checkboxes in here about information to share. First of all, there's one for sharing your dining information with restaurant groups. There's another for allow restaurants to share your dining information with restaurant partners and affiliates to provide you with a better dining experience. Oh, God, I hate that term. And it says this can include personalized offers and promotions. And then finally, one that was checked, which I unchecked, which was share your profile with OpenTable restaurants when booking with them over the phone or walking in. And then there's a separate section for third-party sharing, which that already sounded like a lot of third-party sharing. But there was 2 boxes for share with our group companies and share with other third-party business partners. And then finally, there's a section for point of sale information that says allow OpenTable to use point of sale information. And it says, in addition, OpenTable can receive information from the point of sale terminals at participating restaurants about your dining experience to use for its own purposes, which we analyze to provide aggregate information to the restaurant about their customers as described in our privacy policy, blah, blah, blah. We also use the information we receive for our own purposes described in the privacy policy, and if you do not wish us to use this information for our own purposes, you can turn off the option. Thankfully, mine was already off. So you might want to go to OpenTable.com and look and see if you have a profile. It's probably under your phone number. Mine was under my email address, but you could try both. And then go to your preferences and uncheck all those boxes. But I mean, who knew, right? This is ridiculous. And honestly, I'm a privacy person. I should have seen this coming. I really should have. But I didn't put those 2 things together. So I wanted to make sure that you guys know that this is happening. And then we've got to be thinking about all the other places this is happening as well. All right, next up, guess what? Another story about AI. And this is about Amazon suing Perplexity over their Agentic shopping tool. And this is from Reuters. Amazon sued Perplexity AI on Tuesday over the startup's Agentic shopping feature, which uses automation to place orders for users, saying it covertly accessed Amazon customer accounts and disguised automated activity as human browsing. The clash highlights an emerging debate over regulation of the growing use of AI agents and their interactions with websites, aiming to make them more autonomous and capable of handling everyday online tasks. Perplexity, which has grown rapidly amid the boom in AI assistance, has previously rejected the U.S. shopping giant's claims, saying it was using its market dominance to stifle competition. In the suit, Amazon accused Perplexity of covertly accessing private Amazon customer accounts through its Comet browser, an associated AI agent, and of disguising automated activity as human browsing. Perplexity's system posed security risks to customer data, Amazon added, and the startup had ignored repeated requests to stop. And this is a quote from Amazon. It says, quote, rather than be transparent, Perplexity has purposely configured its Comet AI software to not identify the Comet AI agent's activities to the Amazon store. Perplexity's misconduct must end. Perplexity is not allowed to go where it has been expressly told it cannot. That Perplexity's trespass involves code rather than a lockpick makes it no less unlawful, unquote. Perplexity earlier said it had received a legal threat from Amazon demanding that it block the Comet AI agent from shopping on the platform, calling the move a broader threat to user choice and future of AI assistance. And this is a quote from a Perplexity blog that says, quote, bullying is when large corporations use legal threats and intimidation to block innovation and make life worse for people, unquote. In the complaint, Amazon accused Perplexity's Comet AI agent of degrading customers' shopping experience and interfering with its ability to ensure customers who use the agent benefit from the tailored shopping experience Amazon curated over decades. Tailored, that's a new one. It's for enhanced or personalized experiences. That term has come up way too often today. Third-party apps making purchases for users should operate openly and respect businesses' decisions on whether to participate, Amazon said in an earlier statement. Perplexity is among many AI startups seeking to reinvent the web browser around artificial intelligence, aiming to make it more autonomous and capable of handling everyday online activities, from drafting emails to completing purchases. Amazon is also developing similar tools, such as Buy For Me, which lets users shop across brands within its app, and Rufus, an AI assistant to recommend items and manage carts. The AI agent on Perplexity's comment browser acts as an assistant that can make purchases and comparisons for users. The company said user credentials remain stored locally and never on its servers. Another quote from Perplexity here, quote, "Easier shopping means more transactions and happier customers. But Amazon doesn't care. They're more interested in serving you ads," unquote. The startup said users had the right to choose their own AI assistants, portraying Amazon's move as a bid to protect its ad-driven business model. Wow, there is a lot to unpack there, but this is so rich. This is so funny. So obviously, Amazon wants you to experience their website through their app or through the web that they have, quote unquote, carefully curated. So sure, that Amazon itself is full of all sorts of tricks and techniques to try to get you to see and buy more stuff. They obviously know everything you've purchased from them in the past, and they're using that information to try to guide you toward other products that they will get more money off of probably. And now we have this Perplexity who is trying to shop on your behalf, and using Perplexity to do the shopping for you circumvents all that. Perplexity is not going to be looking at ads. Perplexity is not going to be taken in by that little thing over the side that said, well, you bought this, how about this? Or would you like to add this to your cart? Or what about these similar items? Or this one has better reviews. Or here's a cheaper one that's made by Amazon. Don't you want this instead? All that rigmarole going on when you go through Amazon yourself as a human, Perplexity doesn't care about. It doesn't look at any of that stuff. And Amazon doesn't like that. But here's what Perplexity is doing. Using this Perplexity browser called Comet, you have said, I want you to keep an eye on some of these things. Tell me when the price drops, and when it does, go buy it for me, which we just talked about Google doing with their Agentic AI shopper. And so behind the scenes, this Agentic AI is going to Amazon on your behalf and buying that thing. Well, Amazon doesn't like that. And what Amazon is saying that they're doing is saying, hey, this Perplexity bot is coming to our site pretending to be, let's say, Carrie Parker, but it's not really Carrie Parker, it's an AI bot. It should be telling us that it's an AI bot and not really Carrie Parker. And under the covers, what's going on when a browser hits a website, there's a field called User Agent that is provided by your browser, and that usually tells you what browser you're using. Firefox version, blah, 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 on a Macintosh. All that information is in the User Agent field that is automatically sent by your browser to whatever website you go to. And what Amazon appears to be claiming here is that the Perplexity Comet browser is coming in and not declaring, hey, I'm an AI browser. I'm just a regular old browser being used right now by Carrie Parker, a human, not a bot. And that bot may be clicking on links and surfing to web pages just like a human might do, as opposed to using some sort of back-end API, which would make it obvious that it's a bot. So for all intents and purposes, my Perplexity Comet browser is trying to act like me. It is being my agent. So I really can't wait to see how legally this shakes out. But first of all, let's be clear. There is absolutely no law around your browser having to tell the truth. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure that is true. And that is what Amazon is basically complaining about here is, hey, your browser is lying to us. But if I am deputizing my AI browser to act on my behalf, is it therefore not acting as me? Do I not have the right to assign a sort of power of attorney for my browser to act on my behalf? Anyway, this is really interesting. I'm going to let this go, but with one more comment, I would like to say that Cory Doctorow loves to go on and on about how back in the day, Facebook loved all these kind of bots and interesting tools that allowed people to move from MySpace or Friendster or whatever it was to Facebook. But then when they got to be a big incumbent and the big 800-pound gorilla in the room, they didn't like that stuff anymore because they didn't want any tools or systems that will allow someone to easily move away from Facebook. This is the same stuff that's going on here. It's big incumbents who have all the power, not wanting anything threatening their ability to make money or influence their customers in ways that they have spent years perfecting. Okay, I could talk about this one forever, but let's keep moving. This next one is really sobering, and it's the first documented case of an AI-orchestrated cyber espionage campaign. And this is something that I have said is going to happen. I'm not the only person saying this, but I've told you for sure that AI is going to be used to allow less technically skilled attackers to do some pretty amazing attacks. And this is apparently the first documented case of this happening. I doubt it's the first time it's happened, but we actually caught somebody doing it, and Anthropic, who makes the Claude AI, has documented exactly what happened. And this is very interesting. It's a little bit long, but it's worth going through. All right, so again, this is from Anthropic. We recently argued that an inflection point had been reached in cybersecurity, a point at which AI models had become genuinely useful for cybersecurity operations, both for good and for ill. This was based on systematic evaluations showing cyber capabilities doubling in 6 months. We've also been tracking real-world cyber attacks, observing how malicious actors were using AI capabilities. While we predicted these capabilities would continue to evolve, what has stood out to us is how quickly they have done so at scale. In mid-September 2025, we detected suspicious activity that later investigation determined to be a highly sophisticated espionage campaign. The attackers used AI's agentic capabilities to an unprecedented degree, using AI not just as an advisor, but to execute the cyber attacks themselves. The threat actor, who we assume with high confidence was a Chinese state-sponsored group, manipulated our Claude Code tool into attempting infiltration into roughly 30 global targets and succeeded in a small number of cases. The operation targeted large tech companies, financial institutions, chemical manufacturing companies, and government agencies. We believe this is the first documented case of a large-scale cyber attack executed without substantial human intervention. Upon detecting this activity, we immediately launched an investigation to understand its scope and nature. Over the following 10 days, as we mapped out the severity and full extent of the operation, we banned accounts as they were identified, notified affected entities as appropriate, and coordinated with authorities as we gathered actionable intelligence. This campaign has substantial implications for cybersecurity in the age of AI agents, systems that can be run autonomously for long periods of time and that complete complex tasks largely independent of human intervention. Agents are valuable for everyday work and productivity, but in the wrong hands, they could substantially increase the viability of large-scale cyber attacks. These attacks are likely to only grow in their effectiveness. To keep pace with this rapidly advancing threat, we've expanded our detection capabilities and developed better classifiers to flag malicious activity. We're continually working on new methods of investigating and detecting large-scale distributed attacks like this one. In the meantime, we're sharing this case publicly to help those in industry, government, and the wider research community strengthen their own cyber defenses. We'll continue to release reports like this regularly and be transparent about the threats we find. So here's how it worked. The attack relied on several features of AI models that did not exist or were in much more nascent form just a year ago. First, intelligence. Models' general levels of capability have increased to the point that they can follow complex instructions and understand context in ways that make very sophisticated attacks possible. Not only that, but several of their well-developed specific skills, in particular software coding, lend themselves to being used in cyber attacks. 2. Agency. Models can act as agents. That is, they can run in loops where they take autonomous actions, chain together tasks, and make decisions with only minimal and occasional human input. And 3. Tools. Models have access to a wide variety of software tools, often via the Open Standard Model Context Protocol, or MCP, and I'm going to return to that in a minute. They can now search the web, retrieve data, and perform many other actions that were previously the sole domain of human operators. In the case of cyber attacks, the tools might include password crackers, network scanners, and other security-related software. The diagram below shows the different phases of the attack, each of which required all 3 of the above developments. Now, of course, that's a picture which I can't really describe. It's a pretty complicated one, but they describe it here in text, and let me just read that. In phase 1, the human operators chose the relevant targets, for example, the company or government agency to be infiltrated. Then they developed an attack framework, a system built to autonomously comprise a chosen target with little human involvement. This framework used Claude Code as an automated tool to carry out cyber operations. At this point, they had to convince Claude, which is extensively trained to avoid harmful behaviors, to engage in the attack. They did so by jailbreaking it, effectively tricking it into bypassing its guardrails. They broke down their attacks into small, seemingly innocent tasks that Claude would execute without being provided the full context of their malicious purpose. They also told Claude that it was an employee of a legitimate cybersecurity firm and was being used in defensive testing. The attackers then initiated the second phase of the attack, which involved Claude Code inspecting the target organization's systems and infrastructure and spotting the highest value databases. Claude was able to perform this reconnaissance in a fraction of the time it would have taken a team of human hackers. It then reported back to the human operators with a summary of its findings. In the next phase of the attack, Claude identified and tested security vulnerabilities in the target organization's systems by researching and writing its own exploit code. Having done so, the framework was able to use Claude to harvest credentials, usernames, and passwords that allowed it to further access and then extract a large amount of private data, which it categorized according to its intelligence value. The highest privilege accounts were identified, backdoors were created, and the data were exfiltrated with minimal human supervision. In the final phase, the attackers had Claude produce comprehensive documentation of the attack, creating helpful files of the stolen credentials and the systems analyzed, which would assist the framework in planning for the next stage of the threat actor's cyber operations. Overall, the threat actor was able to use AI to perform 80 to 90% of the campaign, with human intervention required only sporadically, perhaps 4 to 6 critical decision points per hacking campaign. The sheer amount of work performed by the AI would have taken vast amounts of time for a human team. At the peak of its attack, the AI made thousands of requests, often multiple per second, an attack speed that would have been, for human hackers, simply impossible to match. Claude didn't always work perfectly. It occasionally hallucinated credentials or claimed to have extracted secret information that was in fact publicly available. This remains an obstacle to fully autonomous cyber attacks. All right, so what are these cybersecurity implications? The barriers to performing sophisticated cyber attacks have dropped substantially, and we predict that they'll continue to do so. With the correct setup, threat actors can now use agentic AI systems for extended periods to do the work of entire teams of experienced hackers, analyzing target systems, producing exploit code, and scanning vast datasets of stolen information more efficiently than any human operator. Less experienced and resourced groups can now potentially perform large-scale attacks of this nature. This attack is an escalation even on the vibe hacking findings we reported this summer. In those operations, humans were very much still in the loop, directing the operations. Here, human involvement was much less frequent despite the larger scale of the attack. And although we only have visibility into Claude usage, this case study probably reflects consistent patterns of behavior across frontier AI models and demonstrates how threat actors are adapting their operations to exploit today's most advanced AI capabilities. This raises an important question. If AI models can be misused for cyber attacks at this scale, why continue to develop and release them? The answer is that the variabilities that allow Claude to be used in these attacks also make it crucial for cyber defense. When sophisticated cyber attacks inevitably occur, our goal is for Claude, into which we've built strong safeguards, to assist cybersecurity professionals to detect, disrupt, and prepare for future versions of the attack. Indeed, our threat intelligence team used Claude extensively in analyzing the enormous amounts of data generated during this very investigation. A fundamental change has occurred in cybersecurity. We advise security teams to experiment with applying AI for defense in areas like security operations center automation, threat detection, vulnerability assessment, and incident response. We also advise developers to continue to invest in safeguards across their AI platforms to prevent adversarial misuse. The techniques described above will doubtless be used by many more attackers, which makes industry threat sharing, improved detection methods, and stronger safety controls all the more critical. All right, well, we all predicted this was going to happen. I've certainly said this was going to happen, and that AI tools were going to be used for both good and ill. And this whole notion of agentic AI has just accelerated all of this. Basically, we now have the capability to not just ask ChatGPT or Claude Code in this case, hey, how do I attack this company? Or how do I search for vulnerabilities? And how do I exploit those vulnerabilities? How do I extract the data? How do I analyze that data? And having it give you responses that you can then turn around and use, we can now say, you know what? Why don't you just do that for me? Like all of that. And that's this notion of agentic AI, giving these AI systems agency, allowing them to act on your behalf autonomously. And one of the things that allows them to do a lot of this work autonomously, to interact with other tools in the internet and browsers and things like that, is this protocol called MCP, or Model Context Protocol. I swear, we already have so many sci-fi books and movies about this, and yet for some reason we're still shocked when these things happen. We have come up with systems that can understand human language, generate code, and then we are allowing them, even though they are not perfect and they do things wrong all the time and have no morals whatsoever, except for whatever these guardrails that we try to impose around these models. They're not built into the models, but in most cases, these are things that are wrapped around the underlying model to try to prevent people from using them in bad ways. And yet, obviously, we still get around them and trick them into doing things for us anyway. That's this notion of jailbreaking the model, basically bypassing all of these guardrails and getting it to do the things that the developers did not want them to do, and then giving them agency, allowing them to control other things and saying, go for it. Have we not learned anything from all the dystopian novels around artificial intelligence? Anyway, so yes, I knew this was going to happen. It may have actually happened prior to this, but this was a documented case where, in this case, Anthropic's Claude AI was used in a sophisticated hacking operation against multiple companies. And again, it's not just that the thing could do it, it could also do it very fast. And that is something this article called out, which is maybe not talked about enough. It's not just the fact that it can do it, it's the speed at which it can do it, and the speed at which it can alter what it's doing and make corrections and make adjustments. So yeah, giving AI agency is really dangerous right now. We have to be much more careful about this. But the bad guys aren't going to be careful. They're going to take this stuff and run with it. And this is just the first, apparently, documented case of them really using it to do a lot of work that normally would have taken humans a long time to do, and humans with a certain set of skills to be able to pull off. But now we can do it just by telling our AI bots to just go do it. This next one's a short one from the Record, and it's unfortunately about the EU and rolling back of GDPR. A coalition of 127 civil society groups and trade unions is pushing back on the European Commission's reported changes to laws protecting citizens' data privacy and regulating how artificial intelligence can harness personal information. The European Commission will publish a new digital simplification package on November 20th after a draft of the package, known as the EU Digital Omnibus, leaked earlier this month. The leaked text includes changes that gut core provisions of Europe's tough GDPR, or General Data Protection Regulation, as well as the e-Privacy Directive, Data Act, and the EU AI Act. On Thursday, the coalition of trade unions and civil society groups published an open letter to the Commission decrying the changes. And a quote from this, it says, "What is being presented as the technical streamlining of EU digital laws is, in reality, an attempt to covertly dismantle Europe's strongest protections against digital threats. These are the protections that keep everyone's data safe, governments accountable, protect people from having artificial intelligence systems decide their life opportunities, and ultimately keep our societies free from unchecked surveillance." Unquote. The coalition includes the European Digital Rights, EDRI, Access Now, and the Center for Democracy and Technology Europe, and NOYB. The changes to Europe's data protection and artificial intelligence laws under consideration include: 1. Weakening rules requiring citizens to consent to cookies because they allegedly are difficult to understand and impose significant costs to businesses. 2. Changes to how and when data protection impact assessments are required. 3. Overhauling the GDPR so that it only applies to quote-unquote directly revealed sensitive data without protections from inferred data, which is data deduced from direct collected information. 4. Allowing more personal data to be processed to train and operate AI systems. 5. No longer requiring entities collecting customers' data to send data subjects privacy notices in some circumstances. 6. Potentially excluding pseudonymous data or data stripped of direct identifiers from being covered by GDPR. And finally, 7. Eliminating a requirement that AI developers register in a public database. And this is one final quote from the letter. It says, quote, "Unless the European Commission changes course, this would be the biggest rollback of digital fundamental rights in EU history. It is being done under the radar using rushed and opaque processes designed to avoid democratic oversight," unquote. A spokesman for the European Commission did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Okay, so this just keeps happening, and we're backsliding everywhere. And I understand that there are reasons to tweak regulations if they become burdensome and they aren't doing what they're supposed to. Like this whole cookie pop-up thing. We all hate this. And so, yeah, I'm okay if they fix some of that stuff. That's fine. But what definitely appears to be going on behind the scenes here is that big companies are trying to say, hey, this is too onerous and we need some exemptions. And it sounds like they're trying to kind of sneak this through a backdoor process of, oh, don't worry, we're just tweaking things. We're harmonizing the laws and blah, blah, blah. When in reality, what they're really doing is they're significantly undermining these privacy laws and data protection laws. So if you are in the EU, heads up, this is something you need to be aware of, and you should definitely express your opinions on to any of your local representatives who will listen. All right, next up, this is a kind of a long article from the EFF. I'm going to try to kind of go through it quickly, but this is really important, and this is something that, again, a lot of us in the privacy community have predicted was going to happen. As soon as we started doing some of these age verification laws requiring people to prove that they are an adult to access certain content and other types of restrictions on accessing content, people turn to VPNs for this because VPNs allow you to appear to be somewhere else, somewhere outside the jurisdiction that you are currently in, allowing you to bypass these in areas where those laws don't exist or don't need to be applied. And so it was only a matter of time that as soon as people started doing this and it became obvious that they were doing this, that the lawmakers who were trying to block people from accessing content were going to say, hey, you can't do that. And so here we are. This is from the EFF. Remember when you thought age verification laws couldn't get any worse? Well, lawmakers in Wisconsin, Michigan, and beyond are about to blow you away. It's unfortunately no longer enough to force websites to check your government-issued ID before you can access certain content, because politicians have now discovered that people are using virtual private networks, or VPNs, to protect their privacy and bypass these invasive laws. Their solution? Entirely ban the use of VPNs. Yes, really. As of this writing, Wisconsin lawmakers are escalating their war on privacy by targeting VPNs in the name of protecting children in AB 105 and SB 130. It's an age verification bill that requires all websites distributing material that could conceivably be deemed sexual content to both implement an age verification system and also to block the access of users connected via VPN. The bill seeks to broadly expand the definition of materials that are quote-unquote harmful to minors beyond the type of speech that states can prohibit minors from accessing, potentially encompassing things like depictions and discussions of human anatomy, sexuality, and reproduction. This follows a notable pattern. As we've explained previously, lawmakers, prosecutors, and activists in conservative states have worked for years to aggressively expand the definition of harmful to minors to censor a broad swath of content, diverse educational materials, sex education resources, art, and even award-winning literature. Wisconsin's bill has already passed the state assembly and is now moving through the Senate. If it becomes law, Wisconsin would become the first state where a VPN to access certain content is banned. Michigan lawmakers have proposed similar legislation that did not move through its legislature, but among other things would force internet providers to actively monitor and block VPN connections. And in the UK, officials are calling VPNs, quote, a loophole that needs closing, unquote. This is actually happening, and it's going to be a disaster for everyone. VPNs mask your real location by routing your internet traffic through a server somewhere else. When you visit a website through a VPN, that website only sees the VPN server's IP address, not your actual location. It's like sending a letter through a P.O. box so the recipient doesn't know where you really live. So when Wisconsin demands that websites block VPN users from Wisconsin, they're asking for something that's technically impossible. Websites have no way to tell if a VPN connection is coming from Milwaukee, Michigan, or Mumbai. The technology just doesn't work that way. Websites subject to this proposed law are left with this choice: either cease operation in Wisconsin or block all VPN users everywhere just to avoid legal liability in the state.
One state's terrible law is attempting to break VPN access for the entire internet, and the unintended consequences of this provision could far outweigh any theoretical benefit. Let's talk about who lawmakers are hurting with these bills, because it sure isn't just people trying to watch porn without handing over their driver's license. And they give 4 examples here. First, businesses run on VPNs. Every company with remote employees uses VPNs. Every business traveler connecting through a sketchy hotel Wi-Fi needs one. Companies use VPNs to protect client and employee data, secure internal communications, and prevent cyber attacks. Second, students need VPNs for school. Universities require students to use VPNs to access research databases, course materials, and library resources. These aren't optional, and many professors literally assign work that can only be accessed through the school VPN. The University of Wisconsin-Madison's WISC VPN, for example, quote, allows UW-Madison faculty, staff, and students to access university resources even when they are using a commercial internet service provider, unquote. Third, vulnerable people rely on VPNs for safety. Domestic abuse survivors use VPNs to hide their location from their abusers. Journalists use them to protect their sources. Activists use them to organize without government surveillance. LGBTQ+ people in hostile environments, both in the US and around the world, use them to access health resources, support groups, and community. For people living under censorship regimes, VPNs are often the only connection to vital resources and information their governments have banned. And finally, 4, regular people just want privacy. Maybe you don't want every website you visit tracking your location and selling that data to advertisers. Maybe you don't want your internet service provider building a complete profile of your browsing history. Maybe you just think it's creepy that corporations know everywhere you go online. VPNs can protect everyday users from everyday tracking and surveillance. Here's what happens if VPNs get blocked. Everyone has to verify their age by submitting government IDs, biometric data, or credit card information directly to websites without any encryption or privacy protection. And I take issue with that last part. I'm not sure what they're saying there. Privacy maybe. Encryption, you'll have that probably anyway. Anyway, we already know how this story ends. Companies get hacked, data gets breached, and suddenly your real name is attached to the websites you visited, stored in some poorly secured database waiting for the inevitable leak. This has already happened, and it's not a matter of if, but when. And when it does, the repercussions will be huge. Forcing people to give up their privacy to access legal content is the exact opposite of good policy. It's surveillance dressed up as safety. Okay, this article goes on and says a lot more stuff, and I encourage you to read it, but let me just jump to the end here. It says, let's be clear, lawmakers need to abandon this entire approach. The answer to how do we keep kids safe online isn't destroy everyone's privacy. It's not force people to hand over their IDs to access legal content. And it's certainly not ban access to the tools that protect journalists, activists, and abuse survivors. If lawmakers genuinely care about young people's well-being, they should invest in education, support parents with better tools, and address the actual root causes of harm online. What they shouldn't do is wage war on privacy itself. Attacks on VPNs are attacks on digital privacy and digital freedom. And this battle is being fought by people who clearly have no idea how any of this technology actually works. If you live in Wisconsin, reach out to your senator and urge them to kill AB 105 or SB 130. Our privacy matters, VPNs matter, and politicians who can't tell the difference between a security tool and a loophole shouldn't be writing laws about the internet. I could not agree more. There are lots of other reasons why VPNs are a good and necessary tool. You can't ban them. This cannot work. But this is where we are today. In an effort to quote unquote protect the kids, we're going to ruin the internet and privacy and security and ad surveillance for everybody. And again, if none of these arguments are compelling for you, understand that it's also basically impossible to stop this. People who have the technical skills, like me and probably many of you, are still going to be able to use VPN or VPN-like technology to get around these laws. You can use proxies. You can set up your own VPN that is not going to be using an IP address that is known, so you can't block it based on IP address. And remember that the way a VPN works is I connect privately from my computer to a VPN server, and then once it emerges from the VPN server, it looks like regular internet traffic. There's no way to recognize that that traffic is coming from a VPN server unless you happen to know that the IP address that is the return address for that traffic is a known VPN provider's IP address. But there are ways around that. So even if you think this is a good idea, it won't ultimately work. It's not solving the problem. Okay, I need to move on, but I'm sure we are going to be coming back to this issue again in the near future. All right, now this next one is really kind of mind-blowing, and yet it shouldn't be. And I'll explain in a minute. And this is from Roll Call, which is actually a political site. But it's a... I can't believe this. Let me just read this. Okay. Senate Commerce Committee Democrats said they are considering options for ethics and privacy probes into Senator Bernie Moreno, Republican of Ohio, for recording and looking up Democrats' personal vehicle information numbers, or VINs, to find data for a vehicle safety debate. And this is a quote from a spokesperson for Senator Jackie Rosen, a Democrat of Nevada, who published a statement, and it said partially, quote, Democrats on the committee are looking at all their options to get at the bottom of how Senator Bernie Moreno got the VINs and what he did with that information, unquote. Moreno said at a Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee hearing Wednesday that he found the VINs of Senate Democrats' personal vehicles in order to find data on which senators have optional safety technology features in their cars. He made the comment in a discussion on new vehicle affordability. He said affordability would plummet if the federal government mandated new automated safety technologies like impairment detection devices. Moreno, owner of a car dealership in Ohio, said his research on VINs showed Democrats don't have optional safety features in their own cars. Rosen asked for the unanimous consent for Moreno to submit details to the committee about how he obtained the personal VINs, whose VINs he has collected, and what he intends to do with them, and whether senators' privacy was violated. Moreno didn't say where the VIN data was gathered. And this is a quote from Jackie Rosen again, who says, quote, it appears to be a clear overreach and violation of our privacy. I'm asking unanimous consent to find out what he's trying to find out about my automobile, unquote. Moreno responded that the VINs are displayed on the car's windshield. And this is a back and forth between Rosen and Moreno, and they go back and forth. And Rosen says, so you went into my garage in Las Vegas. Moreno says, nope. Do you have a car that you drive here, or do you walk? And Rosen said it is her staff's car. So you don't care about your staff's safety, Moreno said. And then Rosen says, I object to you stalking my car and my staff to find the VIN numbers to present to this committee. You watched me to go to see who drives me, writing down their VIN number so you could find out what they have, unquote. And Moreno says, yep, just to expose the hypocrisy, unquote. Committee Chairman Ted Cruz of Texas didn't grant Rosen's unanimous consent request. Moreno's spokesperson said in a statement that he, quote, utilized information that is available to the general public to expose Democrats' hypocrisy and their willingness to hold Americans to a higher standards than themselves, unquote. When asked additional questions about the public availability of VIN data and how it was collected, the spokesperson sent an April article to DC Report on the importance of VIN privacy. The article says that the VIN, quote, holds a wealth of data about your car's history, including ownership records, past accidents, and service records, unquote, and is stored in public databases. It isn't clear whether Democrats have any recourse. The matter isn't expected to be taken up by the Republican-controlled Ethics Committee. A Democratic staff member added that Democrats are concerned whether the VINs were recorded at senators' private residences. Okay, so there's a few things to unpack here. First of all, your vehicle identification number, your VIN, is perfectly visible from the outside of your vehicle. If you go and look through your front windshield on your dashboard, you can read any car's VIN number. That VIN number is a globally unique identifier for your vehicle, and there are a lot of records tied to that identifier. There's a lot of things you can find out just by searching on a person's VIN number in public databases, including all the features available on that car. Think of it like the sticker that was on your vehicle, all the things that came with this particular car, all the safety features you had, the size of the tires, the entertainment system, any other optional features you have that came with that car from the manufacturer are known to anybody who can look up that VIN number. You should, just for your own edification, go to your vehicle or vehicles, find that VIN number, looking through the dash, take a picture of it, and then go search on that in a VIN database. And they're easy to find. Just search the internet. So that is what this guy did to prove a point. And they're debating whether or not they should be adding more safety features to cars. And he basically said, let's go to see all the Democrats and see what safety features they optionally added to their vehicles to see if they care about safety for themselves. Now, of course, that has nothing to do with whether or not these politicians are trying to make it available to their constituents. You do have a choice on any optional feature, whether or not to have it installed. And maybe the things they're debating would not be optional. It's obviously just a publicity stunt that this guy did. Being a car dealership owner, he knew that he could do this. And I don't necessarily think it's out of bounds that he did this if he got the VIN numbers from the parking lot. Now, it was certainly creepy that he watched them closely enough to figure out what vehicle they arrived in. And if he sent his staffers to people's houses, that would be bad. But let's set aside how he got this information. Because what I want you to know is that this information does exist. And I think it might not be a bad idea to not make this information as public as it is. I don't know that it's a bad idea for anybody to find a VIN number by looking at the outside of your vehicle. Maybe we should make that something you could only see if you can get into the vehicle. And also, by the way, that's usually the number that, if you've heard of Carfax, there are also databases where you can look up whether or not this car has been involved in an accident and other things associated with this record as well. Usually that costs money, but nevertheless, that information is still there, and all you need is the VIN. And this guy, by the way, being a car dealership owner, probably had full access to things like Carfax, where he could have gotten a lot more personal information about these vehicles. Anyway, this doesn't come up very often, but I thought it was a good privacy thing for people to be aware of, where you can find that VIN information and how much that can tell about your vehicle, and by extension, you. All right, one more, and we at least want to end on a happy note here. This is another one from the record. Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican of Louisiana, on Tuesday introduced legislation that would add new privacy protections to health data gathered by smartwatches, health apps, and other new technologies. While individuals' interactions with healthcare providers are typically covered by the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA, no such privacy shield applies to health data collected by apps and smartwatches. This gap has been in the spotlight recently following news that popular period tracking app Flow was selling users' health data to Meta, which it used to target advertising. The bill, known as the Health Information Privacy Reform Act, would mandate that health technology companies not governed by HIPAA tell consumers how their data is gathered and shared. And this is a quote from Cassidy, who says, quote, "Smartwatches and health apps change the way people manage their health. They're helpful tools, but present new privacy concerns that didn't exist when it was just a patient and a doctor in an exam room," unquote. And Cassidy, a physician, chairs the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. Yes, so obviously this is a long way from being passed, but it's a really good idea. So you might want to tell your senator that you would definitely like this bill to be passed, and then your House representative as well. But a couple quick things I want to note here is a lot of people assume that the P in HIPAA is for privacy. It's not. It's for portability. And while it does have the effect of guarding some of your data, it's really not about privacy per se. But yes, we seriously need to update and extend our health privacy laws. And while I think this is good that it's going to require that these companies tell you what they're doing with your data, I think it should go further. It should restrict the use of that data by default and not make it easy for you to allow that data to be used for any other purposes other than for your health. But it's a step in the right direction, so I wanted to call it out and have at least some good news to report today. Okay, now I know we're running long, but I just have a really quick tip of the week for you here. And that's because it's something I've covered before, and also it's one of my Dragon Hacks blog articles, which tries to be quick and to the point. And this really is an easy button. We've talked about people search sites before. These are a certain kind of data broker. This is when, like White Pages or People Search and Spokeo and some of these other sites that you can go to online where you want to look up information about a person. But it's really amazing how easy this is to do and how much information is there. We have so many public records on us that are now searchable on the internet, often for free or for a very small fee. And a lot of these companies are doing this, gathering all these public records like voter registration, property stuff, legal filings, marriage and divorce records, professional and like sport license information, criminal records, all sorts of the stuff. A lot of these things are public records and are now searchable online. So they gather all this information together from all these sources. They build profiles on us. And then they have this information available on these people search sites, usually for a fee, because this is all about making money, right? And these things can have lots of information on us. Full name, gender, date of birth, mailing address, phone numbers, email addresses, employment history, criminal records, debt collections and liens, a list of your close relatives, and maybe even people you have lived with. Now, a lot of these sites do have ways for you to request that your data be deleted, but first of all, you have to go to all these sites, and there are dozens of them, if not hundreds. The process for deleting your data is a pain in the butt, and it requires constant attention. So I want to remind you that there is a company called Easy Opt-Outs that has a really good tool for removing you from a lot of these sites automatically. It's only $20 a year. There are a lot of other companies that do this and charge a heck of a lot more money that aren't really that much more effective. Consumer Reports has reviewed them. Privacy Guides has reviewed them. Wirecutter reviewed them. And they all pretty much came to the same conclusion that as far as bang for the buck goes, Easy Opt-Outs is the way to go. So I'm going to remind you about that. And I interviewed these guys last year. That was a great interview. If you want to know how this works and how they treat your data and how they keep it all private despite looking for your public info, it's a really great interview. Go back and check that out. It was from December 9th of last year, episode 406. And it's definitely worth listening to. But here's the kicker. I reached out to these guys, told them I was going to be making this recommendation, and asked if they could give me a discount code. And they did. So it's nothing that you can remember. So it is in the article. If you go to my website at firewallsdon'tstopdragons.com, you can find it there. To try to keep it from being scanned and scraped by bots, I'm going to put some dashes in the middle of it. Remove those dashes. And when you go to sign up, it'll give you 25% off for your first year. So the article on the web has a lot more information that I recommend you check out. There's a link in the show notes, and you can find the discount code in that article. So that's a good reason to go check it out and give it a shot. I've been using them myself for a while, and they do a really good job. They will send you a periodic report. I think it's every 4 months, because these sites often populate your data by automatically pulling it from these sites. So they're not always good about keeping your data off once you request it taken down. So these guys keep at it. So that's why you're going to probably want to keep doing this year over year. But they do a really good job. It's only $20, and it's definitely worth it. So there you have it. There is your news and your tip of the week. All right, I know we're running long, so I will keep this short. Next week is my best and worst gift guide episode, my annual report on what I recommend for as the holiday season approaches, when you want to buy somebody a tech product, but you want to make sure that it's both private and secure. Or maybe you want to buy something to replace something they already have that is really bad about privacy and security. And this is something I've been doing every year for the last few years. But this year, I have recruited 3 wonderful people from Consumer Reports to join me, and we have a panel discussion where we all throw out our ideas on the best and worst stuff and our gift-giving philosophies and how we approach all of this. It was a whole lot of fun, and that will be next week's interview episode. And like Easy Opt-Outs, Consumer Reports has also given me a coupon code for you guys, which will give you a discount on a 1-year subscription to Consumer Reports. So lots of reasons to tune in next week. And also stay tuned. I'm putting together my promotion for new patrons. I'm probably going to run that in January. I think we're going to save that for January. But if you want to check out my Dragon Challenge coins ahead of that promotion, because I will be giving some away, you can go to firewallsdon'tstopdragons.com and search on Dragon coins or Challenge coin, and you'll find them. They're really cool. Some of the coolest Challenge coins, honestly, I've ever seen, if I can say so myself. But I'll probably give away some swag and some other stuff as well. Probably free PDFs of my book. So anyway, all that is coming up. If you haven't already, subscribe, and then you don't miss any of that. But let's wrap it up for today. Thank you for tuning in. Take care, everybody. Stay safe out there. And until next week, as always, don't get caught with your drawbridge down.